The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yes, good morning, everybody. It is Friday, July 7th. And does everyone have their cameras on? Today is National Koi Day.
National Koi Day?
Yeah, Koi Day. Yeah.
I live right across the park, right across the street from a Japanese park, so I have koi fish like 50 feet from me.
Yeah, koi fish popping over there, huh?
Oh, yeah, dude. Know it.
Getting it. It's also, oh, you're going to love this, Jesse. It's National Day of Rock and Roll.
That's right, my jam.
Yeah. Rock out, you guys. Oh, man. Let's see. It's also, it's National Dive Bar Day also.
Dive bar?
Mm-hmm.
These are all my favorite things, bro.
Right. I figured you would be pretty excited about all this.
Shout out to my hometown dive bar, the Hofbrau.
Oh boy. Interesting. Let's see. What else do we got? We have some other stuff going on today too. It's also National Macaroni Day.
Go, Italians.
That's funny.
Is macaroni really Italian, though, or is that like an American invention based on Italian?
Oh.
No, that's a good question. I don't know, but
I'm going to look it up. We'll keep going.
I thought it was invented by Yankee Doodle.
Haha.
Am I wrong about that? No comment, huh? Fair enough. It's also National Strawberry Sundae Day today. I feel like that should be on a weekend.
Dude.
Wow.
Yeah. Strawberry Sunday's my jam too. Let's go.
Or maybe it should have been yesterday, because that would have made more sense.
Well, I mean, whatever day they choose, whoever these people are, they have their reasons, Jason. They have their reasons.
It's crazy. It's also National Father-Daughter Take a Walk Day.
Oh, dang. I wish I was where my daughters are.
Yeah.
Right here. It's a little rainy.
It's a little rainy, huh? And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms today, you guys. Well, Jenny Beth is out today, and so I have an interesting story that I think you guys are going to thoroughly enjoy. Because, you guys, oh man. Because sorry, I just have a lot going on over here trying to get everything going for you guys. But nonetheless, a suspended cannabis testing lab has appealed and will sue regulators, the owner says. That's right. The owner of a shuttered, I'm so going to murder this, Tynesboro-based marijuana testing facility is pushing back against an order demanding his company cease operations, and he says that he will see the Commonwealth in court over an alleged lack of due process, he says. Assured Testing Laboratory CEO and founder Dr. Dimitrios Pekloudias told the Herald that this testing company has appealed the suspension order issued against his business by the Cannabis Control Commission over allegations they failed to disclose failed marijuana testing results to the state. According to Pelikotoutis, this guy's got a crazy name, I'm sorry, it's super Greek. Contrary to the CCC's allegations, his company has maintained the highest standards and complied with every inspection provided by the marijuana regulators, including, he says, the recent order to identify close-up shop. In a quote, he says, there is a fundamental principle in this state and in this country that before you lose everything at the hands of the government, you have a right to appear in some form to defend yourself. Assured Testing Laboratory, a locally run business with 33 employees, did nothing wrong here, posed no threat to the public, and ensured that no contaminated products reached the market, he said. The issue at hand, according to Pelikotoutis, isn't so much with the test results coming out of his lab, but over the Commission's inconsistent regulatory framework, which leaves the rules of the road open to interpretation. And a quote, this is a simple disagreement about how data was being reported. In fact, the CCC's regulations were so unclear on this specific testing issue that it reissued regulations that became effective as of April 1st of this year, and at all times Assured Testing Laboratory complied with all active regulations and orders, he said. According to the suspension order signed by CCC Executive Director Travis Ahern, the lab was non-compliant enough with reporting requirements that their actions pose, in quotes, an immediate and serious threat to the public health, safety, or welfare of the Commonwealth. The order instructed the facility to cease operations as by July 4th and gave them 21 days to request a hearing over the Commission's action. The suspended lab was responsible for testing about 25% of the marijuana certified as safe in the state of Massachusetts, and according to the Commission's data. The Commission alleges that 17,565 marijuana samples analyzed by the lab in that year between April of 2024 and April of 2025, only 10 or 0.05% were found to contain mold or yeast above the state's statutory limits. The rest of the state's 11 testing facilities found an average contamination rate of about 4.5%, according to the suspension order. In a quote, when compared to industry average lab samples analyzed by Assured were 90 times less likely to fail for the presence of total yeast and mold, the Commission said. According to Pelikotoutis, not a single bit of contaminated product has been allowed to leave his lab. And in a quote, that's the real question at hand of this. Was there contaminated product that reached the market? The answer is categorically no, he said. The Commission's actions, according to the lab owner, have resulted in most of his 33 employees going on furlough as the appeals process plays out. In the meantime, he said he's filed for relief from the courts and will ask a judge to order the CCC to allow him to return to business and compensate his company for lost revenue. It's the least the state could do at this point, he said. The suspension, Pelikotoutis said, should not have been the first step in the process, but should only have come as a last resort. In a quote, there was no due process. In fact, if you read the regulations, this is an overstepping of their power, he said. We're seeing this as a setback, and we expect to be operational again soon, he added. Even while trying to maintain a positive attitude about the eventual outcome of the situation, the lab owner said the CCC's decision to single out his lab has to have other licenses, wondering if they are next because again, they are just doing this, claiming without proper evidence or entirely based on conjecture that our company posed a public health risk, he said. If we're such a risk, why did their order include instructions to complete testing on the samples we'd already received? He asked. Piccolatoidis has requested that the CCC provide his case expedited review, but said he's not sure when a hearing on the matter will be scheduled, you guys. Well, this definitely does not sound like due process to me. This sounds like a whole bunch of baloney to me. And the fact that he had such a low threshold of samples that cleared mold testing. I wonder if they're trying to say that because his rate was so low, that's why they posed a public health risk, because they're saying all the other labs are like just under 5% and that he's at like 0.05%. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
To me, it continues the testing issues that are going on. There has to be some sort of standardization.
Yeah. I mean, but these people, Ro, that they just, I mean, they just have just straight judicial oversight and just can crush these businesses at the whims, and I don't think that's very fair.
No, I don't either. I agree with you 100%. Same thing that happens to the hemp companies that are getting raided, and it's just ridiculous. They should work with these companies as real businesses, and allow them to make corrections or see where they went wrong, and then figure it out. You know, as long as they're not intentionally trying to, manufacture or create fraudulent test results. I think that this is, an issue that the regulators should kind of work in a cooperative capacity as opposed to a, destruction capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems to me like most labs have figured out that there's enough variation that's possible from wet weight, dry weight, curing process, and various remediation techniques that people use. Mm-hmm. That they have figured out that they can all fudge the numbers, whether it's with mold or whether it's with THC percentage, which tends to be the thing that people want. They're willing to do this, and until the regulators can actually figure out how complex testing really is for cannabis. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't even know if it's actually necessary. And I think we've talked about this before. And I'd love to hear your opinion, Jason, as a dispensary owner, but it seems to me like all we really need is a basic mold and pesticide test that's maybe pretty strong. Like, you want to test for all of those things and make sure that there's no poisonous stuff in the weed. But like the stuff about THC percentage and all this is just like, it's over the top. And it seems like it breaks down the whole thing and makes this whole pay to play thing happen.
I would totally agree with that analysis, Jesse. And I think the whole testing thing is a total sham. And I think we should focus more on testing our food than we should focus on testing our weed. There was another story out today that didn't make the cut that said that, New York has over 135,000 ER visits. From people smoking cannabis or whatnot, and like having panic attacks and whatnot. And I'm just like, but at the same time, I read the whole thing and it's like, no one died. Nobody died. No one died. And they're claiming that all those hospital visits are from legal licensed product as well. So I found that to be super interesting. I always love a good gaslighting, Jesse. But it's just,
I saw that New York story too. It's totally a joke.
Yeah.
It's funny that these people are, first of all, if you're eating that much edibles and you don't know, there's so many things in the process there that are just like,
well, we don't know.
Who sold you those? Who didn't tell you? Every bud tender should know when they sell edibles, and to say to the person, hey, you know what you're doing with these, right?
Well, I saw,
because that's a lot of it. And then the other part of it is that, if there's pesticides or neem oil present or some kind of chemical, who knows what that's doing to you. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on.
I think the whole testing thing is a total sham. I mean, we never had any of these problems when we just had street weed. You know what I mean? And just even under a medical, even under just the medical guys, we never had any of these kinds of problems ever with anybody. Even on the mold thing, Jesse. You know, like I'm not even sure if we need to test for that. I think people can, you know, not purchase moldy weed. I don't think it's that difficult. You know what I mean? And granted, it is an agricultural product, and sometimes there may be one bud that does have it, that as opposed to the rest of the pound or whatnot, but. We go back to deli style. This will alleviate a lot of this whole thing, all this automated packaging and all this stuff. If we just go back to our basic fundamental way of distributing cannabis, it eliminates a lot of this, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah. I hear a couple things going on here. First is the romanticization of the past, right? We never had these problems in medical or legacy. Bullshit. Okay, there are people who ate too many brownies that didn't have any dosing information.
We're talking about flour and mold.
What we're talking about laboratory testing and potency and all of the data that spins off from science.
Everything was 5x, 10x, 3x.
So, if I may, so first of all, the romanticization of the past is something that people who are not young do. So welcome to middle age, Jason, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely accurate. That's why people go, I remember when it was just a nickel, right? Yeah, but you know what? That doesn't mean that was a better era. I think the thing we have to remember is the difference between the failures of regulation and the limitations of science. There's no limit to the science that would provide value, both in terms of safety, potency, terpene count. I don't think we throw all of that out. I mean, there are awards that are given just based on the terpene content of flour, and I'm not ready to just scrap all of that. And I think we also need to remember that the failure of the industry is not on the operator's shoulders solely. The failure of industry is also on the shoulders of the regulators and the regulations and the paradigms in which these entities are tasked with sort of behaving. And so if regulators are taking a lab that has amounted to 25% of the market share, and if that lab can't be successful, that's not just on the lab, that's on the regulators and the regulation and the way that they discharge their duties. And so, yes, the regulators are there to keep the consumer safe and to keep the industry healthy. But if you can't support your market as a regulator, and all of a sudden an entity that was doing 25% of the testing is out of business, it's not a failure of the industry. The regulators and the industry are best when they're incredibly intimate and cooperative, not in a way that doesn't pass a sniff test, but in a way that still prioritizes the same thing, which is make money, do good, deliver great products, have a happy customer. And I don't think shutting down a lab that has, what's going to happen to the other labs? You're going to ruin the supply chain. You're going to back up all the products. You're not going to be able to get products to the shelf quick enough because you just took out the 25% capacity in your market. The regulators can't be feeling good about that as an outcome. And until there's reasons why we don't have standardization around testing procedures, but until there are, you can't hold a lab accountable to a set of rules that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think you might have jumped in a little bit after us because we kind of covered all that. And you reiterated a lot of what we said, is that the regulators don't even understand the testing, and they don't understand the complexity of the testing. So they're regulating things that don't really make sense. And for instance, regulating THC percentage doesn't really make sense. Testing for terpenes is fine. You mentioned a whole bunch of things like testing for terpenes. There's awards. My understanding is most awards are given on the experience and people judging those terpenes, not necessarily the numbers on the package.
Yeah, so I heard all of what you guys said, and I was just giving you the little John what in redundantly echoing the parts that I agree with, because it's a riff, ramble, and rant, and that's my trademark.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely not correct in so much around awards that are given based on lab results. So we'll just use the California State Fair because it's up and running, and it's going to be popping next week with the award ceremony. For the first couple of years, those awards were given entirely based on lab results, not just on potency, but on terpenes, highest terpene content, highest limonene, highest this, highest that. And
but
so
do you really care about those awards?
Absolutely. I think that those farmers, I don't think the marketplace cares, but I think the industry cares. I think those farmers deserve to be celebrated for the results they create that are above average or, in some cases, extraordinary. And so, yeah, I think
the problem is that the testing results may be off. So if it's just based on the numbers, how does that, like, as an aficionado and someone who tastes and knows things, is that really the thing that you care about? And I'm asking you personally. Or
yeah,
is that kind of like, well, let's see. I don't know. Let's open the package and actually find out.
Well, so a couple things. First of all, you have the constant that all of those entrants were tested at the exact same laboratory. So they're not going to get variation of results based on the lab itself. Secondly, I think SC Labs has an impeccable, just a great reputation.
A really good reputation.
You know, I couldn't say a bad thing about them if you paid me to do it. And the third thing,
talk shit, but that's okay.
Yeah, but you know what? If you're not
haters.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's your success taking shots at you, right? And so and then thirdly, as an aficionado or just as somebody who enjoys the plant, I do like trying flower where the terpenes are at a really, really high level for flower, and I do like contrasting that with flower that doesn't have terpenes at that high of a level. And it may not be the ultimate criteria for why I like something, but it's like we wouldn't be shaming the avionics industry for having geek awards for scientists who are figuring out how to go Mach 10 merely because most people who fly a plane are never going to go Mach 10. We would be in the aviation industry going, great, push the envelope, push the boundaries, do new things, go where people haven't gone before. And so I think that these things, I don't think a customer is going to necessarily go into a store and say, I need the highest terpene flower that won this award. But I think the industry needs to, but I think the industry needs to support the industry by encouraging operators to do new things, to go to great heights, and to create outcomes and coax the highest genetic expression out of cultivars, and to know that at least their peers are going to be like, dang, gang recognized game.
So you're saying the awards are just for industry? It's not for any people?
Yeah, I mean
I'm saying awards support innovators, entrepreneurs. Yeah, but I'd say awards support innovators and entrepreneurs and encouraging them to always bring their A game, level up, never be content with what they did last year, and to push the envelope. Yeah, I think it's great.
My problem with that is that this becomes like a circle jerk where it's like a bunch of dudes who grow and who are all competing for these very niche things that the customer and the consumer doesn't actually care about. And I'm not saying that the customer or the consumer shouldn't or should. I'm saying they just don't. And so these industry things where that's the only thing, it's like, okay, you have a bunch of growers and a bunch of people who really understand going, oh, you got 7% terpenes on your flower. That's crazy. Guess what? You're going to smoke it and barely be able to smoke it because it's going to be so intense on your throat because it's so high. Okay, cool. That's fun, I guess, kinda. But my whole thing is at the end of the day, if you won that award and you got the highest percentage of terpenes on your flower, first of all, I know it's going to be super harsh and hard to smoke. So there's that. And then I'll be interested to try it, but then I'll be like, okay, is it actually super flavorful and smooth and enjoyable and all the other things? And that's where I feel like some of these awards fall short, is that it's like, okay, what is the actual point other than, showing off to your buddies that you did something that's really hard? Okay.
I feel like you never did 4-H as a kid, Jesse, and it shows.
Yeah, I skipped all that, bro, for sure.
100% it shows. Do you say that to the young kid who's involved in 4-H? Because if we go back to the foundational notion that this is an agricultural product, I think the 4-H stuff really is a good analogy, a good model.
Again, even that, it doesn't matter for the consumer if the 4-H kid can grow the biggest pig on the planet. The consumer doesn't care. That's just for the 4-H kids. See what I mean? It's like, okay.
I think really, it comes down to the education of the consumer. And as consumers are less educated about what the products are, what type of products are best for them, it's not as much of an issue. But I think as consumers become more educated and they're like, okay, I don't want something that's going to make me sleepy. I don't want myrcene. I don't want high amounts of this and that. I want this. I think that the sophistication of it, kind of like the wine industry, will evolve over time as people get, more advanced on their knowledge of this plant and what works best for them. Because I do think different strains work differently for everyone. And I do think, like the alcohol, in regards to testing on not only the molds and the pesticides and things, which we know a lot of the companies can remediate those with machines now, right? But that the potency is kind of like alcohol. You want to know if you have a 2% or a 20% type of potency. And so I think that consumers want that. My biggest issue with the testing is the lack of, standardization so that every lab can get the consistent results every time. And so there's no discrepancies in those things. And really, again, it goes back to cooperation between the regulators and the cannabis industry. And I think the biggest problem in most of the states because of this is because the regulators still don't want this. They are still fighting against cannabis in every way that they can to try to negate it, to try to make it look bad, to try to say, oh, well, if it's over 30%, people are going crazy, which there's no real statistical foundation for. But these are the things that they're using against us. And I think that's the biggest problem, realistically, is that regulators still don't want this.
Mm-hmm. Yarrow, are you turning your camera on?
I will as soon as I can.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But I appreciate your commitment to highlighting my beauty.
Yes, I'm here for it. I'm here for it, Yarrow. We have gone way over time on this. This has been way over time. But this is a total ridiculousness. This lab lost their license without due process. I'm totally against that. And again, Jesse, I'm with you. I don't think we should be testing anything THC percentage at all. I think that's the most dumbest thing in the world. I understand it for extracts or people that make extracts and things like that, as far as for doing R&D or distros and whatnot. But as far as for the general public and the average consumer, I think we totally need to eliminate that. And on that, we're going to roll into our first commercial. And we're going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where will I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Oh, and we are back. We are back today. Well. Man. Michael, I'm so glad you could join us today, because I wanted you to. I definitely wanted you to chime in on this story. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, Kentucky medical marijuana companies have filed a lawsuit claiming the program rollout is unconstitutional. That's right. Medical marijuana companies in Jefferson County have filed a lawsuit against the Commonwealth and former Office of Medical Cannabis Executive Director Sam Flynn, alleging the rollout of Kentucky's medical marijuana program is unconstitutional. Attorney James Gregory Toutman said his clients, a group of investors who had originally hoped to secure processing and dispensary licenses allege the Kentucky General Assembly illegally delegated authority to create the Commonwealth's licensing districts and issuance limits to the Kentucky Cabinet of Health and Family Services. The suit also seeks the court to pause all operations for currently licensed medical marijuana businesses and issue licenses to the plaintiffs who were not chosen to receive them during the lotteries that took place in 2024. In a quote, they say, "We're taking issue with the way the legislature failed to be the ones who decided how the state would be carved up for licensing purposes into various regions and how those licenses would be allocated within the regions. We believe that was a function that the legislature and the legislature only had to address," Troutman said. The filing of the lawsuit follows several complaints from community members as well as local hemp and cannabis business owners and farmers in regards to the program's application process and lottery drawing. Several in-state business owners allege some companies' out-of-state businesses used loopholes in a state law to create multiple LLCs in Kentucky, enabling them to submit several applications. Those applications then allegedly allowed some companies to achieve vertical integration or having licenses across all three of Kentucky's medical marijuana licensing categories, which state law was intended to prevent. The claims have since prompted an investigation into the program by Kentucky Auditor and Public Accounts Allison Ball, who was formally launched back in April, and Troutman, who expects the Commonwealth to make a motion to dismiss the case or opt for an application to transfer the venue to Franklin County or another outside Louisville, says he is prepared for anything that may be thrown at him. In a quote, "A while back, in response to news stories about the state's auditor's investigation, the governor actually said that if any of the parties don't like how things are done, they should just file suit," he said. "Well, here we are," he says. The Louisville-based attorney says that if the judge rules in favor of his clients, the issues will have to be addressed next January in the legislative session. In an additional quote, "They'll have to adopt an expansion or amendment to their enabling legislation from 2023 to specifically address how the state gets carved up, how the licensing is going to be done," Troutman said. "The legislature needs to make that call, not the agency." Office of Medical Cannabis spokesperson Kendra Steele said the General Assembly gave the Office of Medical Cannabis the duty to create a fair licensing structure back in 2023. And in a quote, "With the General Assembly's approval, the office developed a lottery system that is completely open, transparent, and viewable to the public," Steele said. "We are confident that any court will uphold the process," they say. Well, lawsuits just flying everywhere. We saw this thing coming. We called it over here first when we said they were going to do a lottery. We knew there was going to be lawsuits involved. And here, there's someone that didn't get a license that is now filing a lawsuit. Man, oh man, oh man. And I'm sure they'll probably end up getting a license after this too.
We got to talk about that because it's not just about the lottery in Kentucky that occurred. There's been a total mess with that program over there and what they did and how they did these things. There were hundreds of fraudulent applications filed in that case, in that state. It's really a disgusting way that they did it. Companies scammed it and have admitted that they scammed it by creating multiple businesses to be able to apply for multiple different licenses when you were not supposed to as owners. So really, Kentucky made a mess of the program that they created outside of the lottery.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I love this lawsuit.
Yeah, yes, I love all these lawsuits personally. I get a big kick out of them because these people, man. I think that may be the only way to actually ensure that you get a license is to file a lawsuit after one of these things, unless you're just going to hope to win. But man, how they carved out the state as far as the districts for allowing these uses, and then it goes back. You're going to have the other naysayers that be like, you know what, they should have just allowed it to be everywhere and allowed for local control and and that creates a whole other host of problems. And it seems like for these governments, Michael, they can't win for losing.
Cut out there.
Oh, I just was saying, it seems like for a lot of these governments, they can't win for losing, because if they were to give it to local control, you're going to have all the local control issues that everybody experiences here in California. There's a whole host of other states. I'm sure there'd be a ton of towns that totally blocked these businesses from even being allowed to operate within them. But Kentucky, they're saying, hey, you know what? Here's your districts. Here's where you got to go. Boom, 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 boom. Here's you are. And now someone's complaining about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what, we can't get it right until they actually open up the market and allow it to be created like any other American business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you should be able to everybody, it should be easy to get a license. Should allow as many people as want licenses as possible and let them go out there and fail, which is what 90% of them are going to do. Because most people can't actually run a business in the first place, no matter what kind of business it is. And cannabis is actually really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yar, are you with us? Are you still with us? Did you drop? Are you still there?
No, I'm not dropping. I'm popping. Okay. I'm thinking about my own experiences in these regulatory programs.
You're on the lily pad pondering, huh?
Well, one comes up for me as a deeply personal experience. I was questioning whether I should be sharing publicly, which is as a social equity applicant permit in San Francisco, I onboarded grant funding. And the first time I onboarded grant funding, I bought computer equipment. Yep. And the second time I tried to onboard grant funding, or a third time rather, they were like, no, computer equipment's not approved. I said, well, what do you mean? How is a computer for an office for distro approved round 1, but not round 3? Nope, sorry, doesn't pass a sniff test. What sniff test? Well, we didn't like it. We ran it by the controller. Okay, well, can you give me their comments? No, we can't give you their comments until after the grant round funding is completed. Okay, great. So that computer equipment worked for round 1, but not for round 3, but you're not giving me an explanation. And you won't tell me until I'm no longer eligible for that round of funding. Thank you very much. The next thing I know, because politicians, when they have a problem, they throw money at it, right? That's like the politicians' way of like putting a Band-Aid on things or trying to fix those things that are too complex that they don't truly understand. So now they've dished out all this grant funding across many municipalities in California, and I'm not trying to go down the rabbit hole about whether that is or is not effective or not, but next thing you know, they're auditing the grant funding. So they send me an email. You've got 2 weeks to provide all this information to us. I'm like, okay, well, I understand when I onboarded the grant funding, I committed that I would make my records and stuff available, but 2 weeks, are you fucking kidding me? It took you 2 years to give me the permit, and now against the backdrop of being a single parent or dealing with a grandparent who's not doing well with cancer, you're going to give me a 2-week shot clock to provide you with follow-up documentation? Okay, great. So you want photos of the things I bought for grant funding? Great. Oh, now that I've sent it to you as a PDF, you don't accept PDFs. Okay, good to know. Thank you so much within that 2 weeks. Oh, now that I've sent it to you as a Google Drive, you don't accept Google Drive links. Okay, good to know. Maybe you should have put that on the request initially. Oh, you don't take Dropbox either? Oh, well, I'm 52 and tech deficient. I'm supposed to figure out how to take over 30 photos and make them low res so that they can actually attach to a single email or go Google the compression strategy. Oh, wait, now you didn't get the stuff you wanted from me in time. So now you're going to condition me for a computer log to a computer that I bought through the grant funding. I don't even know how to run a computer log. I'm YouTubing how to run a computer log as an inept 52-year-old tech deficient dork trying to figure out how to comply with the additional concerns. Now, why they don't take Google Drive, why they don't take Dropbox, why they don't take PDF, it just boggles me that the people who are quote unquote tasked with making sure all the money was spent properly by the people who received it create the most labyrinthian process to do that and don't even give you the instructions ahead of time. And so here I am, and that's just from onboarding some funds. I can't imagine what it would have been like in the story we're no longer covering with the grant with the lab that has to comply with the regulations, because my experience has been half the time, whatever the rules of the road are, You're not even told until you've driven past the intersection. Oh, I'm sorry, you were supposed to make a left there.
Mm-hmm.
You were supposed to make a left there. Well, that would have been good to know before I went through the intersection. It's crazy making. It's crazy making.
Yeah, but Yarrow, this is why they need a lot more money to run their program so that they can do even more. They can make you jump through even more hoops because it's clearly not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like my grant funding was like the smallpox blankets. Like, Jesus Christ, you kept me warm for a second here, but what the heck are we doing? So and you know, my apologies to those who feel offended by the analogy, since I'm not indigenous, but it's crazy making. And so I think that's one place where, you know, liberals and conservatives and left and right and red and blue and purple can all agree that at least in this industry and probably in a lot of other industries, the government is as much a part of the harm as they are the solution, if not more. And they're stakeholders, but they're not economic stakeholders. The people who work in these departments, they don't work on commission. They don't work if the industry wins. They get to clock in, clock out, cock block all day, go home, and still get a great 401k.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. It's a shame. It's a crying shame. It's a crying shame. And we did get a super chat. We want to thank OG Grandma 420. Thank you so much, Ben. It says deschedule or bust with the deschedule pack. And, you know, we are all about descheduling cannabis over here. That's the only way that the federal government needs to move anywhere on that, or else not, just leave it the hell alone and pass safe banking and just leave it be. But nonetheless, we are going to roll right into Mr. Jesse Barney. He's the founder of Barney Design Co. and can help your brands get to the highest plateaus of them all. That's right, he's the new red-headed grandfather himself. It is none other than Mr. Jesse Barney.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Appreciate the intro. My story's pretty quick, but also very cool. Comes out of New Zealand on MSN. New Zealand approves medical use of magic mushrooms to treat depression. New Zealand has granted limited approval for the medical use of psilocybin, the psychedelic compound found in certain mushrooms, to treat treatment-resistant depression, the government announced Wednesday. Psilocybin remains an unapproved medicine, but a highly experienced psychiatrist has been authorized to prescribe it to patients who have not responded to other treatments, said Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour in a statement. He called it a major step forward for people suffering despite having exhausted all conventional options. Under strict regulations, only psychiatrists who have participated in clinical trials involving psilocybin will be permitted to prescribe it in the future. The move reflects growing global interest in psychedelic-assisted therapies, particularly for mental health conditions like depression. In 2023, Australia became the first country to allow the medical use of both psilocybin and MTA for specific mental health disorders. Well, it sounds like if you're feeling down, you need to go to the down under. Mm-hmm. So that's my story today. I'm Jesse Barney, and I'm pretty excited about what's happening with psychedelics. It's cool. This is clearly a very limited approach to legalizing psychedelics, but at least it's something, and it's countrywide. So that's pretty exciting. That New Zealand and Australia are the first countries to really address this in this way. So love to hear what everybody else has to say.
So Jesse, here's my first question is how are they allowing these magic mushrooms to be dispersed to possible people to treat depression? Is this all being done through a pharmacy, or are they just saying if you're depressed, just go and find your local street dealer and you're okay to have them, or what's their plan?
Well, according to the article, there's only one psychiatrist right now who is allowed to.
Of course, there's only one on the entire 2 countries.
Well, this is just for New Zealand. Australia has a different program that they started in 2023.
Okay.
Which I'm not as familiar with, and I'm not really familiar with either of these programs, but I'm interested to get more familiar because I didn't really realize that Australia had passed medical use of psilocybin and MDA countrywide 2 years ago. I think that's really cool. But it sounds like they approved one psychiatrist to prescribe psilocybin. And of course, writers like to use flowery language and stuff that's evocative. So they said magic mushrooms, but I don't think that's what's happening. I think they're prescribing psilocybin, or probably even more likely psilocin, which is the extract.
That's the synthetic version of it, isn't it?
Well, synthetic it's an extract. It can be synthetically made from other things, but typically it's the stable form. So your body converts psilocybin into psilocin, and psilocin is what actually causes the psychedelic experience once it's converted in your body. Similar to like decarboxylation.
Got it.
Kind of.
Okay.
But
THC and THCA kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah, sort of. And so psilocybin is in its form and it turns into psilocin in your body, and your body uses the psilocin. So you can make shelf-stable psilocin. Psilocybin itself is not shelf-stable. It'll deteriorate. So I imagine it's something like that they're using. I wouldn't imagine that they're just giving away mushrooms or prescribing actual mushrooms. Again, that's also different strains of mushrooms from different growers have different potencies, and you can have different effects. And I would imagine that this psychiatrist that they're saying is highly experienced. Haha.
You think so?
Well, that's what it says. So it says that they approved one psychiatrist who's highly experienced with psilocybin to prescribe it.
Are we sure it's not just the medicine man from the indigenous tribes out there in New Zealand?
I mean, I don't really, without diving deeper and doing some actual journalism here, I don't really know. But and then it did say that in the future they will be approving other psychiatrists who participate in clinical trials. So, but it's countrywide. I mean, it's a countrywide approval of psilocybin as a medical treatment for depression, which is really cool. So that's the cool part, is that it may be limited, but at least it's a countrywide discussion and something that's happening on a national level in New Zealand and also in Australia.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Jason is probably eating some mushrooms when he says, and how are they dispersed like a spore guy, instead of saying, how are they distributed like a supply chain guy?
I mean, tomato, Yarrow. Tomato.
Shows he's been fungi for a while.
I'm the funnest guy I know.
Dispensed, dispersed, distributed.
Spored out, You know what I'm saying? Michael, you have any thoughts on this?
I love it. My only issue really is, to me, it's like they have to be, not successful with other medication. I personally think nature should be a first shot and opposed to a last shot. So that's my only issue with it. But I love the progress on it, and I hope that we get some great science out of those countries so that we can continue to prove that, these psychedelics are superior to all the SRIs and all the antidepressant medications that they're giving people, and have a much greater long-term effect for healing people as well. So I'm excited about that.
All right. Well, some good news. Look at that. Some good news. And on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back. Oh, yes, and we are back. Stop whatever you are doing. Make sure that you hit that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. The control tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The control tower from Highly Educated. Ah, yes, and we are going to roll right in. We're back, and we are going to roll right in to Mr. Yarrow Kubrin. He does cannabis. He does cannabis real estate. He does regular real estate, and he can even sell you maybe even a lily pad or a toadstool, too, all from the Shire. That's right. It is none other than Mr. Yarrow Kubrin.
Oh, geez. Lily pad. Love that. Okie dokie. Well, my story today is unfortunately from right in my backyard, and something I've been tracking for a while. But let me preface it with a little pre-rant, right? That I think is really important. So it's interesting because this is a cannabis show, but in many respects, cannabis is policy, and in many respects, policy is politics. And lovely law enforcement, right? Cops are like teachers and firefighters. They're instrumental in maintaining a just and civil society, but there's been a real lack of accountability, no citizen oversight in most jurisdictions, and it's been a bellwether litmus test for whether someone's on the left or the right. You've got the left saying defund the police, which doesn't really make any sense. Go back to the drawing board, at least on your slogans. And you've got the right licking boots acting like everybody who's in blue must be regal. Challenge I see is that behind the thin blue line, there isn't omnidirectional accountability. There isn't a clearing of house from within the house. And talk to someone on the left, they're pro-union. Talk to someone on the right, they're anti-union. Talk to someone on the right, they're pro-police union. You talk to someone on the left, maybe not so much. And so law enforcement has been this interesting jumping off point to see what really people think and feel. Here in my backyard, cannabis cultivators were treated like the piñata for law enforcement, beaten with a stick, and all their goodies were taken. Unfortunately, this just wasn't the occasional rotten apple or an isolated event. And what we've seen here when there's been accountability is that a few at the bottom get held up as the bad actors and hung out to dry. But in this county, the district attorney's office shared in the proceeds from asset forfeiture from any of the local police departments, splitting the wins, state-sanctioned piracy, and a local police department was driving up and down 101, robbing cultivators left and right of their cannabis, often without charging them, often without leaving them with any paperwork, and turning around and backdooring it. That's right, taking it out of the evidence room and selling it. The kind of stuff you'd expect Robert De Niro and Sean Penn to be starring in Hollywood is actually happening right here in the wine country adjacent to the Emerald Triangle. And so, without further ado, we'll talk about one of the ones that is most recent, but probably not as infrequent as those who are still licking boots would like you to think when it comes to our men and women in blue. So, this case, Omar Figueroa, who's been on this show more than once, an esteemed attorney, this case became criminal when they discovered that cops were robbing cultivators. And then the Rohnert Park Police Department was sued under RICO, the Racketeering, Influence, and Corruption Act, which was designed to fight the mob. They were sued by a variety of victims and their attorneys, including beloved Omar Figueroa, because they alleged that this was a systemic pattern of corruption. Rohnert Park folded like a lawn chair, paid out millions of dollars, and some of the cops, the few that were left out to dry at the bottom of the org chart, are now likely going to go to jail. So, without further ado, hot off the press, July 7th from KQED, trial begins for ex-Rohnert Park police officer accused of seizing marijuana from drivers. The criminal trial of former Rohnert Park police officer Joseph Hoffaker, however you pronounce his last name, I'd say douchebag is probably a better one, is set to begin Monday in San Francisco federal court. He is charged with conspiracy, extortion, falsifying records, and impersonating a federal officer to seize marijuana from motorists on Highway 101, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. 7 years ago, Low Wheels of Justice, KQED, first reported on a string of allegations from drivers who said Rohnert Park cops operating far outside the city limits had unlawfully seized hundreds of pounds of cannabis during pretextual traffic stops. As recreational marijuana became legal in 2018, growers who had operated in the gray area of the medical cannabis market finally felt safe to come forward. Hoffaker's douchebag's trial promises a rare window into how local and federal officials responded to long silenced complaints of police corruption. This has been a long time coming, and it's a very important case, said Isaac Swagger, a defense and civil rights attorney who filed a lawsuit over the unlawful seizure scheme. He said taking the case to trial demonstrates the government's willingness to start holding people accountable in a real sense, people who were given a free pass for so long precisely because they were cops. Shortly after KQED published its investigation in 2018, then Sergeant Brandon J.C. Tatum, Hoffaker's former partner, resigned. The city moved forward to terminate Hoffaker's, but later agreed to a settlement, ensuring that an internal affairs allegation into the introduction team would remain secret. That's right, they buried it despite a new police transparency law. The city of Rohnert Park has since paid out about $2 million to settle civil lawsuits over the seizures, and a federal grand jury indicted both Hoffaker and Tatum in September of 2021. We covered on this show that Tatum was recently, his property was the scene of an unlawful cultivation in Sonoma County, and Permit Resource Management Department did nothing to him while he was awaiting trial. Dual tier outcome of justice, I think probably so. So, 2 months later, Tatum pled guilty to conspiracy to commit extortion under color of law, falsifying records in a federal investigation, and tax evasion. Unlike Tatum, Hoffaker chose to fight the charges, backed by the police union's legal defense fund. Great use of money. And according to court filings and documents reviewed by KQED, over the past 4 years, Hoffaker has gone through at least 7 different lawyers. 7 lawyers in 4 years. Not a good statistic. Including Chris Shea of Marin, who died unexpectedly just 2 weeks before Hoffaker was set for trial in October. Hoffaker's latest defense team, Richard Cabellos of Ferron Law Group, said he cannot comment on his client's case until after the trial is over. The U.S. Attorney's Office also declined to comment. There's always been this gnawing feeling that these guys are still walking free, said Hudell Freeman, one of the victims of the seizure scheme who received a settlement from Rohnert Park. They've never done any time for the crime. Even with extensive public scrutiny, the lawsuits and the federal indictment, this case continues to present surprises. In February, KQED discovered that Sonoma County Code Enforcement had busted Tatum for a large indoor marijuana grow on his Santa Rosa property. In March, prosecutors dropped one of the charges against Hoffaker. And then in May, a new witness, a co-conspirator who said he sold stolen weed on the officer's behalf, was added to the case. Brady Kopp, one of the key witnesses expected to take the stand, is Tatum, whose plea deal includes an agreement to testify against his former partner. Let's be clear. So Tatum is not only a dirty cop who robbed cultivators and broke the law, now he's also a snitch on his partner. Way to go, brah. Tatum was the sergeant in charge of Rohnert Park's interdiction team, which oversaw the seizure of over $3.8 million under civil asset forfeiture laws and at least 2.5 tons of marijuana between 2013 and 2018, according to the documents obtained and analyzed by KQED. In 2015, Rohnert Park's mayor formally recognized Tatum for his drug suppression effort. He was a good earner, is what they're trying to say. Yeah. But alongside the apparent success of the interdiction team, complaints about Tatum's tactics and his credibility began to mount. In 2016, the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office had placed him on a Brady list, a list of officers with known integrity issues. Brady list means that they have to disclose in court that they are liars. When Tatum takes a stand, Cabellos will likely introduce materials from his record to impeach his testimony. He's a habitual liar, said Swagger, who gave the DA evidence of Tatum's dishonesty, which led to his placement on the list of problem cops. But Swagger said in that case, Tatum's testimony will be backed up by hard evidence. So I don't think that the case is made or lost on the testimony of any one given witness. Wrapping this up, Tatum has spent the past 4 years out of custody awaiting sentencing, which is currently scheduled for September. While under pretrial supervision, KQED discovered again that Tatum was fined by the Sonoma County Code Enforcement in 2024 for a large indoor cannabis grow on his property. Federal officials declined to comment on whether this violated the terms of Tatum's $100,000 bond agreement. Let's be clear, he could have been put in jail immediately for violating his bond agreement, but they don't do that to cops, even dirty cops. Pro-offer admission. In February of 2022, court documents show that Huffaker sat down with the FBI and admitted that he and Tatum had agreed to extort drivers under the color of official duty for marijuana in December of 2017, that they committed multiple such extortions, and that the defendants expected to receive money from those extortions, and he knew his acts were criminal. So, I could go on. This is a bit more... This is another 5 paragraphs. And I need to wrap it up.
You got a long article today. I always complain about my long articles.
And a bone to pick. So I'm going to just wrap this by circling back to what I said. There is not omnidirectional accountability. The thin blue line creates a lack of weeding out bad actors internally. Most police departments are not under civilian review, the way the Army and Navy and Air Force is under the charge of a civilian executive, aka the president. And at least in the Emerald Triangle, this industry, before adult use, was a piñata for law enforcement. And I'm absolutely certain that this is not an isolated incident. Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News.
Man, this guy was over there just straight jacking for buds.
He was a good earner. Asset forfeiture goes to the bottom line of the district attorney's office as well as the city. In asset forfeiture, you don't even have to be convicted or be guilty.
Yeah.
It is state-sanctioned piracy. It is rampant, prolific, systemic, and mostly undisclosed.
Man.
Yep, and the majority of it goes to the police departments too. Good portion of those fundings that they get from forfeitures, that's how they buy all their, expensive military equipment and stuff like that. Usually, it's really disgusting that they can just steal from people.
So, in this area, they were using a program called Black Asphalt, which I believe was developed for either the CIA for abroad or for the FBI. They used it to target motorists up 101, typically at the Gauntlet, which is what we call that area between Cloverdale and Healdsburg on Highway 101, and they would just take the cannabis. The thing you got to remember is that this guy's earnings were exponentially greater than anybody else's, and in a city that was very, very small, and typically his theater of operation was outside of the jurisdiction of a city. The idea that it was just these 2 police officers and nobody else knew anything is the biggest crime, and it's the one that's not being reported in this article.
I agree with that.
Interesting. Well, is this cop, after he's convicted, Michael, do you know, is he eligible to be hired at any other departments? Or does he lose his ability to be hired or be a law enforcement going forward after these types of convictions?
Technically, he should not be able to. Most of them do require a criminal background check, but and then can he even carry a gun? Yeah. Right. So then he can't even perform the duties of a policeman if he's a felon and he's carrying a weapon. So I think there's multiple problems with that. But could he go to the Department of Corrections? Could they come to another state and kind of whitewash his record, which I hear happens pretty regularly inside Florida as well, which, cops get released for some reason, but because of who they are, this one, I don't know if they could do that because, it's public already. They can't just brush it under the rug, but I think most of the time cops do that, brush it under the rug, send them to another agency and they get jobs. But hopefully if he's got a felony conviction, there's no way that he's going to be carrying a badge again.
Interesting.
I mean, it reminds me of the Boy Scouts or the church, where they would take the bad priests or the bad scoutmaster and they would shuttle them to a different part of the country to avoid a greater level of accountability. Your question about whether this person can be hired elsewhere is fundamentally based on whether departments hold their staff to a high level of accountability and ethics. If we look at the hiring and firing practices across the country, at a very minimum, we can say there's a lot of room for improvement.
Fair enough. Well, Nick Bradley chimed in the chat. He said, Jason, yes, Brady list officers are able to be hired again.
Yeah, but I don't think, Nick, that was Jason's question, right? We already know from the article that he was on the Brady list. The question I think Jason has is after the convictions that he's gotten as a result of the extortion and operating under color law, will he then be eligible to be hired in any law enforcement capacity? And I think I would read between the lines with Minardi's answer to say the answer is we don't know.
Fair enough. I think it would vary right by department, and whoever is running that department would ultimately have the final say, wouldn't they?
I mean, I think there's departments out there that are going to say you're a good earner and you took the fall for the department and we want you. Yeah, I don't think there's any world in which these two officers were doing this by themselves under the lone gunman theory.
Yeah, that was exactly
the Oliver North of the Iran-Contra scandal. They took the hit. They did. They were at the bottom of the org chain. Everybody benefited. The departments wet their beak. The DA's office got tons of money, and then they sold. You know, when it got hot, these two had to take the hit.
That was exactly my thought, Yarrow. Exactly my thought. I was thinking this guy might end up after this just moving to Florida and working for what's his name?
Campaign for fundraising.
No. The Polk County Sheriff, Sheriff Grady Judd. I could totally see him wanting to recruit this guy over there because he's the one. He's the one that has the entertaining YouTube channel where he does all the press conferences whenever they seize products and different stuff, and he's an interesting guy.
Yarrow, didn't you say that there was 2.5 tons confiscated total?
Yes, but is they also falsified their evidence records and they underreported, and there was stuff that never made it onto the manifest. So it's probably that's like a low estimate given what's going on. I mean, even and this was from 2018 or a certain time frame, right? 13 to 17 is the period in question.
Oh, so prices were higher back then.
But
I was sitting here trying to think, well, you know, if it's 2.5 tons, it's about 5,000 pounds
value. Well, if we use their street value, we're talking about enough to cure the national deficit.
So this is millions and millions of dollars is what's not spoken in the article. They didn't really quantify how much money this is. This is at least $3 million worth of weed.
The thing that's so challenging is, you know, when there are bad actors that this society entrusts to be better than average actors, the idea that this officer could have already been convicted and not incarcerated for 4 years is an extraordinarily different path for him in the criminal justice system. And we are indoctrinated to believe that Lady Justice is blind.
Right.
But if you're on federal bond and they come to your house or a property you own, and you've got to grow up and you've already been convicted, and they allow you to remain unincarcerated when we know that's a clear violation of his federal bond, it's hard, I think, to use this case as a way to restore public confidence in these departments when it does not appear that they are treating him the same as they would treat the average.
Right. You can be a drug dealer on the dole of the government and not get the same consequences as a drug dealer who's living just a normal citizen, which is insane.
There's no way that any normal citizen would stay out on bond with that type of situation,
right?
So just not possible. It doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that I think, Yarrow, your point is that does destroy the faith in the justice system and the government overall. And it's just another tally or another notch in the belt of distrusting the government.
Well, if the entire exercise was to hang a few out to dry and to run that lame, overly used talking about how it was just a few rotten apples and the department is good, they completely screwed the pooch on trying to provide those optics by treating this guy like he was the VIP convictee and who doesn't even have to have his bond revoked when he's still blowing up the barn on his property and gets in trouble with the same county that he used to work on. It's just crazy. You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, there's clearly a lot of money involved, and it's way more than we could even tally. And I mean, just off the top of my head, I tallied $3 million off 2.5 tons at a pretty low price.
That presupposes that it didn't go before 2013, and that the guy's still blowing up the trap barn currently.
That's my point.
How much has happened since 2017?
Exactly. It just keeps going. So there's clearly more going on, and there's clearly a lot of money to be floating around. That there's way there's more than that much money, and there's not all of the officers involved.
What we know from our experience in the legacy and medical market is that there are ecosystems, there are pods, there are subpools of people within these less than visible cultures, business models, spheres of influence. The idea that these two cops who drove a vehicle, sometimes put on their uniform, sometimes didn't, and seized tons and tons and tons. The idea that it was only them and that nobody else knew, that's the story that's not being reported. That's the bigger crime. And what we used to say is it's the cover-up, not the crime.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, well, it's a cliche that still rings true to this day. Yep. So we are not seeing anything about the cover-up. We are not seeing anything about additional culpability. You got to think for your second. If you're the district attorney and you got all these cities in Sonoma County and you got this teeny little dot of Rohnert Park, which is not even the biggest city, and all of a sudden they're earning 5, 7, 10 times more than any other cities or relative to their per capita enforcement population, and you're getting lots of money as a result, and you're not asking any questions. The district attorney did get a law degree and then passed the bar, right? That would lead most to assume that that person is at average or greater than average intelligence. If you're receiving all this money that is statistically impossible for Rohnert Park to create, while simultaneously clapping and giving this guy promotions and awards, the idea that it's just 2 police officers and 1 private citizen who helped them broker 2.5 tons or greater, that's the biggest bullshit.
Well, Yarrow, and you're coming. What you're saying is like applicable to anyone who doesn't live there who reads this story. And you live there, and I've lived there. I've spent tons of time on the 101 from Eureka to San Francisco, and I know the stories and know that there's way more cops doing this than these 2 guys. And it happens in way more counties and in way more cities and locales than that. Garberville is famous for it. Between Eureka and Garberville is famous for it. Laytonville is famous for it. There's Cloverdale is famous for it. There's all these locations that are right on the 101 where the cops are famous for pulling people over, taking their weed, and letting them go.
And in this story, what started the thread being pulled on the sweater was they pulled over an ex-law enforcement guy who was operating compliantly under the medical model. They took all his weed, and they had a third person with them from another department. I don't know that that person's been charged. What's challenging for me is I'd like to put a lot of faith in our FBI. They have all the resources, all the training, all the tools. The idea that only 2 police in Sonoma County were involved sounds like the FBI came in to do a cleanup and cauterize issue that was bleeding into the press and not clean house.
Sounds like this is a job for internal affairs more than the FBI, because the FBI just said that what I'm saying, that there was no Epstein list and no everything else, and we all know that's just totally ridiculous. And Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself.
And you're pushing a police department's internal affairs to do any better? That is absolutely ridiculous. Sorry to say, but they are a joke. Every agency I've worked with, internal affairs, they are basically police officers who are protecting their police officers in any way that they can to make sure that they don't get sued under the guise of we're investigating and we're handling this. It's really a joke.
Isn't it great when they say we're handling this? We'll take it from here.
Yeah. And it's ridiculous that, again, cops continue to be held at lower standards than average citizens in every aspect of the law. And it's really, really, disgusting. And it's really why we need a total change in our law enforcement and how they police. Get rid of sovereign immunity.
Yep. Fair enough. And on that, we're going to roll into our final commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Oh, man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade. And in a GMP certified facility, so you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where do I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Yep, there we go. And we are back, you guys. Yarrow's had a few things happen to him. Hopefully
I'll
none of those things.
I'll show you on the doll.
We're going to
swear it hurts, Yarrow.
Exactly. We're going to roll it right on into Mr. Attorney at Law, Mr. Michael Minardi. He's out there in the great red state of Florida, helping patients make sure that they are able to stay free, criminal-free and justice-free, to make sure that all their cannabis is able to stay safe and secure. He represents patients, clients, and a whole host of others in his practice at Minardi Law out in the great state of Florida. It is none other than Mr. Michael Minardi.
Hello, everyone. Happy high noon on the East Coast. And today, hoping that this player doesn't get to play the NFL season, because I'm a Giants fan.
Oh, boy.
Cowboys KaVontae Turpin arrested on misdemeanor marijuana and weapon charges. Good old Kentucky. All-pro returner KaVontae Turpin of the Cowboys was arrested in a Dallas suburb on a misdemeanor charges of marijuana possession and unlawful carry of a weapon, authorities said Sunday. Turpin was arrested by police in Allen on Saturday. The 28-year-old is out of jail on bond, and there is no record of an attorney for him. The team declined to comment. The former TCU standout is going into his fourth season with the Cowboys and recently signed an $18 million three-year deal. Turpin's TCU career ended when he was kicked off the team after the school found out about a domestic violence case against him. The case, which took place in Mexico, was discovered following an alleged incident with his girlfriend in an off-campus apartment in Fort Worth. Both cases involved the same woman. Cowboys signed Turpin of the USFL. He played in several satellite football leagues before joining the USFL. He secured a spot on the team for punt returns, and they do expect his role to continue to grow this year with his new coach in Dallas. Last year, ironically, he had 31 catches for how many yards? 420. So he was smoking then, and he's still smoking. So that's it. Article, what you think about this? Is this going to ruin a person's career for weed? Jeopardize a contract? And what is Texas doing, man? Come on, this is just a waste of time and resources for them.
This guy has a great last name. He must have been Turpin it up, Michael.
Yeah.
Man, we get these, and they always got to have a gun involved. It seems like with all these professional athletes, anytime they get busted with weed, there's always a gun involved.
I mean, expect they all have nice jewelry and things on them and with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not mad at it. I'm very pro 2A, but it's how they frame these kinds of articles. You know what I mean? It's like they didn't say that his gun was legal. They just tried to say, oh, you know what? He had a gun and he had weed, so it obviously makes it a bad thing. And it's like that's really not the case. It's total propaganda.
And you would think after Ricky Williams that we were done ruining or trying to ruin sports stars' careers over their cannabis.
The good thing is the NFL shouldn't have a problem with this, so it shouldn't really affect that aspect of it besides the criminal aspect of it, right? Code of conduct on the criminal aspect, but at least the cannabis use shouldn't affect it like it did Ricky.
Well, he got caught in Kentucky with this, right? Are we correct on that?
No, Dallas.
Oh, in Dallas, and well, Dallas, they just rescinded their voter approved initiative to not enforce on cannabis crimes. The city has rescinded against that. So, was he the first victim because of this?
Seems like it. Or one of the first victims with a profile.
Very, very possible. He might have been the first victim. I mean, do you think he's going to get fined from the NFL or Jerry Jones or anybody?
No, you got to beat your wife to get a fine in the NFL.
Yeah, and the past couple of years they've reduced their policies on cannabis use and stuff like that, and testing and things. So I doubt he'd get fined or suspended for this. Maybe fined, but it probably all depends on the resolution of the criminal case.
I think it more depend on whether or not he has a slower 40 time than you know what I mean. If all of a sudden he starts underperforming, then I think they're going to go on this. But if he keeps on performing at the same rate or better, I think they'll just kind of brush it under the rug because NFL is all performance based.
Yeah, it is now. I think more.
Yeah,
because you got the Josh Gordons and the Rickies.
Yep.
That were superstars and probably would have had even been more yards, better players, closer to the Hall of Fame if they didn't have the cannabis use.
Fair enough. Any thoughts on this, Jess?
No, I mean it seems a little bit like trying to frame the guy as a gangster, which kind of sucks. Like you pointed out with the gun, unfortunately, if you're rolling with a gun and weed in Texas, I don't know what to tell you, man. You know the risk you're taking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's just part of the game.
Fair enough. Well, we're gonna roll into our final story of the day, and I think you guys are gonna enjoy this one. Possibly, maybe not. But a JDF employee is accused of supplying minors with marijuana gummies. That's right. A Detroit juvenile detention center employee has been charged with supplying 4 17-year-old males housed there with marijuana gummies, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office announced. Man, their canteen was lit. Joseph Robinson, 22, of Detroit, was charged with 4 counts of furnishing a controlled substance, marijuana, to minors, an 8-year felony, and 4 counts of jails furnishing contraband to prisoners, a 5-year felony, they say. Robinson was working as a mentor at the detention center on July 2nd, 6:30 p.m., when he allegedly gave the contraband to the youths, officials said. Employees observed the 4 to be lethargic, incoherent, and impaired mental states, and incoherent and in impaired mental states, and immediately had them transported to a local hospital. They were discharged from the hospital on the same day, and an investigation by detention center officials resulted in the arrest of Robinson on Thursday, officials said in a quote. There is simply no excuse for the defendant's alleged behavior. It is especially reprehensible because the defendant was supposed to be a mentor to the young men housed at the JDF, and not a catalyst for criminal conduct. The results of his actions was the exact opposite of what this volunteer program was designed to be about, said Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy in a statement. Robinson is expected to be arraigned in the 36th District Court on Saturday. Man, who knew that they had court on Saturdays? I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. Michael, you go to court on Saturday?
Yeah, first arraignment, first appearances and stuff.
They make a judge show up on Saturday? Get out of here.
7 days a week.
Get out of here. I'm baffled right now.
Holidays too?
No way.
Hmm?
Bro, I've never been to court on a holiday. They've always said that there's no court. I've never seen none of that.
More people get arrested on the holiday, and usually it's the next day they go into court.
Yeah, no way, bro. It's the next work. No, usually if you get arrested on a holiday, sometimes like your 72-hour hold is extended.
No,
because it's only 72-hour work days.
You have to be brought in front of a judge, at least in Florida, within 24 hours. That's a due process right for bond issues. That should be consistent throughout the country, no longer than 48 hours.
Oh, I know it's 72 hours here in California.
Are you sure that's not for a mental health hold?
Nope. 72 hours they can 72 hours they can hold you once they detain you, arrest you or whatnot. They have 72 hours before you have to be able to see a judge. And that is only work days. That's only work days. So like if you get arrested on a Friday night and it's a holiday weekend, you won't get to see a judge until at the earliest on Tuesday.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that's the same in Montana and Idaho, the only two places I've been to jail when I was a teenager, young 20s.
Out there in Florida, that's why you guys are so tough on crime. You guys are overworking your judges. They're getting pissed.
They gotta do their job, man.
They're getting pissed. They don't get no time off. They're like, oh man, the revolving door is just nonstop.
That is insane. Well, it is nonstop, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Probably why they have to do it, so they don't have too large of caseloads every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Do they have night court out there in Florida?
No.
No? Oh, that was a great show. I used to love that show.
It was a cool show.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this, Yarrow? These gummies and man, I can just imagine these guys that were getting them, bro. I wonder how many items they were selling a pack of gummies for. Because if a little super tiny pinhead joint is like 10 items, you know what I mean? I'm wondering what a pack of gummies was. Probably maybe 25, 30, 40 items, something. Man. Maybe they just sold them individually, you know what I mean? 10 items a gummy.
I mean, I don't feel like I need to comment because I think everybody knows that just because I like cannabis doesn't mean I think it's okay to supply minors, right? I mean, I'm a dad.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not either. I'm not here, advocating for it. I'm just saying, I'm just commenting on the story.
I mean, I think that this again goes back to entrusting people who work for the government, whether they're a police officer in Rohnert Park or they're a detention.
He was a mentor. It was a mentorship program, the guy that was bringing this stuff in.
Well, and they were a juvenile detention center employee. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's okay for us to hold them to a higher standard if we're going to trust you to work with our troubled youths. Mm-hmm. And you probably should not be muling in edibles.
Yeah.
So again, it'll be interesting to see what happens to this person. Are they treated fairly? Are they treated with preference? Are they going to be the next JC Tatum and get a wrist slap? How would somebody who wasn't an employee of the government tasked with helping the youths, how would they be treated? And is this person going to be treated the same way?
Mm-hmm.
They'd be quickly arrested.
Skeptic in me says probably not.
They'd be quickly arrested for smuggling contraband into a facility.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that's the first thing that would happen. I think this is interesting, and it's just like, it allows them to continue to hit the cannabis industry by saying people are giving it to minors and stuff. And, I don't think anybody in the cannabis industry, unless it's for medical reasons, condones, the use by minors. So, this person just continues to make the industry look bad.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair. You know, in the chat it says from National Disgrace, he says he didn't mentor them well enough not to rat him out. LOL. Man, you know, the world is a crazy place, you guys. and just for the record, none of us up here condone giving cannabis to minors. Just for the record, I think I speak for all of us when I say that. But nonetheless, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. And big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to Cloud Media partners Elias and Kai somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.